All right, hey there, beautiful people. I'm back here for another round of midweek manna. So, this past Sunday, we talked about the practice of truth telling. Now, the word truth, that is a loaded concept, especially today. And there are a few aspects of truth that I didn't get into in that message because I didn't think you would really want to listen to a 45-minute sermon. All right, then. So I thought I'd come on here and add on another layer of truth telling for us to ponder. And the question I have is, when might it be ethical or even potentially loving to not be fully truthful? Now, as people who follow Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life, emphasis on the truth, our initial reactions is to always tell the truth. I mean, you just look at the story that we read this past week in our church of Ananias and Sapphira. They were left dead because of one act of deceit. Based on that story alone, any sort of deception from a biblical perspective sounds like a really bad idea. Well, I'm going to make it a little more complicated for you. I'm going to start with the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verses 8 through 19. Now a new king came to power in Egypt who didn't know Joseph. He said to his people, "The Israelite people are now larger in number and stronger than we are. Come on, let's be smart and deal with them. Otherwise they will only grow in number. And if war breaks out, they will join our enemies, fight against us, and then escape from the land." So the Egyptian king is worried about these Israelite people. And scripture goes on, as a result, the Egyptians put foremen of forced workings over the Israelites to harass them with hard work. They had to build storage cities named Python and Ramses for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they grew and spread. So much so that the Egyptians started to look at the Israelites with disgust and dread. So the Egyptians enslaved the Israelites. They made their lives miserable with hard labor, making mortar and bricks, doing field work, and by forcing them to do all kinds of other cruel work. Now here's where it gets important for us today. The king of Egypt spoke to two Hebrew midwives named Shiphrah and Puah. When you are helping the Hebrew woman give birth and you see the baby being born, if it's a boy, kill him, but if it's a girl, you can let her live. Now the two midwives respected God, so they didn't obey the Egyptian king's orders. Instead, they let the baby boys live. So the king of Egypt called the two midwives and said to them, "Why are you doing this? Why are you letting the baby boys live?" I mean, they're disobeying a direct order from the king, and when you do that, the king has questions. The two midwives tell Pharaoh, "Because Hebrew women aren't like Egyptian women. They're much stronger and give birth before any midwives can get to them." So God treated the midwives well, and the people kept on multiplying and became very strong. And because the midwives respected God, God gave them households of their own. That is an act of deception by the midwives. Maybe they just took their sweet time in getting to the Israelite woman after they gave birth. Or maybe it was other some type of cultural difference, or maybe it was just a flat out lie to get the king off their backs. In some shape or form, there was deception present. And in this case, God appears to be pleased with them because of that. Okay, second scripture. Joshua chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. Joshua, Nun's son, secretly set 2 men as spies from Shittim. He said, "Go, look over the land, especially Jericho." They sent out and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab. They bedded down there. Someone told the king of Jericho, "Men from the Israelites have come here tonight to spy the land." So the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab, "Send out the men who came to you, the ones who came to your house, because they have come to spy on the entire land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. Then she said, "Of course the men came to me, but I didn't know where they were from. The men left when it was time to close the gate at dark, but I didn't know where the men went. Hurry, chase after them. You might catch up with them." But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the flax stalks that she had laid out on the roof. The men from Jericho chased after them in the direction of the Jordan up to the fords. As soon as those chasing them went out, the gate was shut behind them. Once again, we have here a story in the Bible of deception, and it's seen positively. Rahab completely sent authorities and was dishonest about what she had seen and experienced that night. And then, in looking at these 2 stories, I think they're very comparable. Some of the stories that we heard during World War II, when people were harboring Jews in their house, and there would be authorities, the Nazi regime, who would come to their house and say, "Are there any Jews in here?" And they say no. The book, Lest Innocent Blood Be Shed, fantastic, very powerful book. It's written by Philip Halley. Tells the story of how some of these acts of deception, done out of a sense of love and faithfulness to God, protected human life. So, friends, I think it's safe to say that truth-telling can be a little complicated at times. Now, clearly, these examples from Exodus and Joshua and during World War II, they're not the norm. The norm is that we are called to truth. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. even talked about how, if you're caught red-handed doing something, context would have been civil disobedience, hand yourself over to the consequences. But we do have to look at each situation in regards to figuring out how to tell the truth. Because Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who I've talked a lot about during this series, just a remarkable man who understood community development and did a lot of seeking when it came to truth. And he was really challenged with this during a time during the Nazi regime when there was rampant deception. And when he wrote about truthfulness, Bonhoeffer would emphasize the context of the situation and God's purposes, because the large lies that the Nazi Party was telling were reshaping the social reality. And in order to resist that evil, what they did often looked like deception. And Bonhoeffer wrote that telling the truth is not solely a matter of moral character, it is also a matter of correct appreciation of real situations. To tell the truth means something different according to the situation. We must take into account the relationships we are in at one time. Telling the truth, we have to engage with relationships. It's about people and lifting them up. Charles Welburn describes truth as the loving purposes of God in the world. Truth is not always just bare facts and is consistent with the compassionate purpose of God as revealed in Christ. So what do we do? Right? How do we figure this truth stuff out? When do we tell the truth, and when do we maybe tell it slant? And it might not always as straightforward as we think. I think Bonhoeffer is wise in saying that context, situations, and relationships influence that. But here are some questions from Dr. Christine Pohl that we can ask ourselves when we're discerning about telling the truth. For whom is this truth helpful? That's one. Who benefits when it is told or hidden? That's two. Who is harmed? Why do I or we want it known? Again, those four questions are: for whom is this truth helpful? Who benefits when it is told or hidden? Who is harmed? And why do I or we want it known? If our motives for truth telling is just self-serving, there's potential that it might actually do more harm than good. But when our truth telling is rooted in the love and justice of God, when it seeks to lift others up, when it seeks to strengthen the relationship, whatever that may look like, and certainly when it comes to standing where God is at a particular situation, whatever that looks like, that is truth where God can be seen. So that's a little more on truth telling. Might have just made it a little more complicated for you, but as I said a few weeks ago, life in ministry is messy. Following Jesus is messy. Sometimes truth telling can be messy too. But as we discern, God is with us. So we hope to see you this Sunday as we close out this series talking about hospitality. You can come worship with us at St. Paul and Bloomfield Hills at 9:45 or at Hazel Park at 11:15. All people are welcome at both services, and we would be delighted to host you as our guest. Take care and have a great week.